artichokes, and stuffed mushrooms never made it to the dining room table. It was relegated to a folding table set up especially for the holidays where appetizers sat and were ignored. It was like the kids' table for food. On Thanksgiving, the menu was always the same. Manigot with sauce and meatballs, followed by turkey, sweet potatoes with marshmallow sauce, and green beans with breadcrumb topping. And of course, stuffing. Years later, when it was just me, my parents, and Mary, we'd ask her if she wanted to go out to dinner, which to an Italian is an insult, and she'd still cook for 18 people. When I was growing up, one by one, my dad, my brothers, me, would go into the kitchen and ask if we could help, and she'd just yell at us, "Get out of my kitchen!" We knew what was coming next. You could set your watch by her blow-ups. Soon she'd be screaming, "No one helps me!" Then she'd go into the bedroom and sulk for half an hour before coming out to finish cooking. No one dared ask what time we were eating. But who doesn't get stressed during the holidays? Meanwhile, my dad's work was steady. Anthony, impetuous and rebellious, married a local girl he met at Eisenhower Park when he was 20. He's still married to the same girl. They lived nearby. If things got tense, I could sneak off to their apartment and thumb through his massive record collection. Stephen lived in the city and let me visit any weekend I wanted. And me and the guys were attached at the hip, spending most of our free time at one another's houses. Now Frank, Vinny, Paul, and Steve were my brothers, especially Frank. At his house, I didn't even bother asking for food anymore. I just walked in the back door, opened the fridge, and took what I wanted. Here's how good Frank was to me. When I was a junior in high school, I quit the wrestling team. The coach, who also happened to be my offensive line coach on the football team, had taken all the fun out of it. He was nothing like the guy I loved when I first started wrestling in junior high. Instead, I joined the bowling team. No joke. Bowling was something my dad and Stephen did well together. They played in a league on Sunday mornings, and sometimes I went with them. I was pretty good. I once heard my biology teacher, who was also the bowling coach, talking about the team. I liked him, so I decided to join. From then on, whenever my wrestling coach saw me in the hallway, he mocked me by walking behind me and pretending to roll a bowling ball. Honestly, I was a little embarrassed. I left my ball in the trunk of Frank's Bonneville, so I didn't have to carry it around school on days we had tournaments. Frank, who never said no to anyone who needed a ride, would drop me off at the bus that was taking us to the meet. I'd jump out of the front seat, scramble to the back, pull my bag out, and get on the bus as fast as I could. I didn't want anyone to see me getting on that bus. I always felt like it was one of those things you have to defend, but you know what? Fuck it. I enjoyed it, and I had Frank in his car to keep me from looking like an idiot. Years later on the show, Howard asked me, "You come home one day, there's a dead body on the floor of your apartment. Who's the first guy you call?" "It's Frank," I said. "It's a no-brainer." "What would Frank say?" Howard asked. Every solution for Frank always starts with, "I'll be over in the van in 5 minutes." That's how I'll always think of him. My buddies and I prided ourselves on being able to hang with any other group of kids, avoiding the petty rivalries that come with different cliques. I got us in with the Park Boys. Then there were the Black Leather Boys, who all wore black leather jackets, and the guys on Maple Street. I know it sounds like something out of West Side Story, but it was the 1970s. Everyone knew us as the guys who drove around in Frank's tank. The one thing we always needed, especially to fill up Frank's gas guzzler, was cash. None of us was rich. Our parents gave us the basics. Everything extra was on us. One night, Frank pulled up to my house holding a stack of 50 New York Nets tickets. This was the old ABA team starring Julius Erving that played at the Nassau Coliseum right by our house. I asked him, "How'd you get those tickets?" "A friend of my brother's took them out of the back of a neighbor's convertible," he said. "Let's go scalp them." "Great," I answered. That night we went to the Coliseum and hustled like never before. Every time I sold some tickets, I'd run around the arena looking for Frank. I'd give him the money, he'd give me more tickets. When we were sold out, we hopped in his car and went to a secluded place where we laid out all the money and divvied it up. We made $40 each. Not a bad score. But I always needed more. Records were an expensive habit. By high school, I'd given up my paper route, mowing lawns, and moved up to more glamorous employment opportunities. Roy Rogers. Practically everyone I knew worked there at the franchise across the street from the Coliseum. That's where Frank met his wife. It's also where my buddy Tom, who'd become a member of our group, first met his eventual wife. Maybe there was something in the secret fried chicken recipe. Before I actually got the job, I was always hanging out there because that's where all my friends were. I had no one to go out with until the shifts were over. I still crave Roy Rogers fried chicken. I got a job flipping burgers. The rush on the counter always came after events at the Coliseum ended. Grateful Dead fans were the worst. They wouldn't order anything. They just come in and start picking the lettuce and tomato from the fixings bar. Eventually, we wised up and stationed someone at the fixings bar whenever the dead were in town and the shows let out. They also stole anything that wasn't nailed down: toilet paper, paper towels, and sugar packets. I've always been hyper-productive, and while I worked at Roy Rogers, I also juggled a few other jobs. During one summer in high school, I worked from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. as a custodian for the school district, thanks to Paul's super-achieving mom, who worked on the school board. Then on the days I didn't work at Roy Rogers, I worked at Fortunoff near the Roosevelt Field Mall. Vinny worked there, and so did my mom, so they put me in the stockroom. I still have dreams of being overrun by luggage. It came into the store all zipped one into the other like Russian nesting dolls, and I had to take out each piece and set it up on the floor. My poultry experience was parlayed into a job delivering Chicken Delicious on Friday and Saturday night to parts of Long Island like Roosevelt, where Dr. J and Howard were from, and Hempstead, the slum where Anthony lived after he moved out. Dumbest job ever. I was a small white kid driving around the worst parts of town with bags of chicken and cash. At 2 a.m. I'm lucky I was never mugged. I even worked as a stock boy at a woman's clothing store called Ups and Downs. I was the token man. I had to run out to buy the ladies their lunch, carry their stuff to the cars, walk them out to the parking lot at night, and even buy their tampons. Really, it was like being on the bottom rung of some Hollywood agency, only without the scenery, the stars, or the weather. All I had was middle-aged women on Long Island. But it wasn't the tampons that made me quit. One day the manager sent me to Woolworth's to buy a paint scraper. When I got back, she wanted me to scrape gum off the floor. I thought, fuck this. I know I haven't done shit in my life, but I ain't doing this. Working in radio wasn't even on my radar when I was in high school. To me, music was still a hobby. I checked the album charts in Rolling Stone. I still tuned in Casey's American Top 40. And on the way to school, if Frank was giving me a ride, I'd make him listen to WPLJ, which catered to high school kids like us. I thought that when I grew up, I might own a kennel supply store. Really. When I was a junior in high school, I got a job selling dog food, pet toys, and anything else people needed for furry friends at a store near my house. The place was owned by 2 brothers who really liked me. Those guys were making a lot of money. They always talked about opening a second store somewhere else on Long Island. One brother had 2 daughters who were never going to go into the business, so he said to me, "If you want to open a second store, I will stake you." I always had that in the back of my mind. My dream career choice, though, was to be a photographer. We had a subscription to Life magazine, and I remember being moved by the pictures. I could still see those images of soldiers in Vietnam and of the fatal shooting of a protester at Kent State. My dad bought me an Instamatic camera with the flash bulbs that attached to the top of it.